Welcome to Podheria. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with two exceptional leaders, Lisa Roger and Christie Nader. Lisa Roger is a seasoned business executive, board member, advisor, and author. She has held influential roles such as COO and CIO, demonstrating her versatility and leadership across various domains. Christie Nader is the Chief Information Officer at Jet Aviation. Christie's expertise in information technology and her strategic vision have been instrumental in driving innovation and efficiency at Jet Aviation. In this episode, we'll explore their career journeys, leadership philosophies, and the challenges they've overcome. We'll delve into their insights on business transformation, technology, and the evolving role of women in leadership. Whether you're an aspiring leader or a seasoned professional, this conversation is packed with valuable lessons and inspiration. Without further ado, please welcome Lisa Roger and Christie Nader. All right, welcome Lisa and Christie. Thank you so much for being on this episode. So excited to talk to you guys about just everything in the business world and all of your experiences and insight to this time. So just getting started, if you all could just share a little bit about your career journey and sort of how you got to the point that you are at today. And maybe we can begin with Lisa.
Sure. Well, thank you for having us on the podcast. I know Christie and I have had the pleasure of talking to women in business for the College of Business at George Mason University, and it was a huge honor. So thank you for having us. Let's see. Where to begin? I'll keep it really short because it's a long journey. But started off in technology and got my degree in information management systems and started off doing maintenance coding in a skiff in Southeast DC back in '89. And then just a journey that was not a straight line at all. One that has lots of zigs and zags, from owning two firms, doing sign language interpreting, technical training, program management, cybersecurity, to being a CIO and now a COO for a small tech firm called OTMO. So I'm really, I think I've had a blessed life and a blessed career that I've got to do a lot of different things, and every part of that journey has been building blocks that I now use in my career.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. Christie?
Yeah. And again, thanks for having us. You know, Lisa and I are always open to chatting with anyone, and we want to provide any advice and support that we can. So with my background, a little bit different. I got my bachelor's degree in sociology from George Mason, and my first job was working at a survey research center. I thought that I wanted to do kind of the quantitative side of sociology with this research and think about Census Bureau, Arbitron, things like that, Bureau of Labor Statistics. And so I started working at the survey research center, but and I quickly started working with the computer guy. And I grew up building computers with my dad earlier, and I didn't want to study computer science when I went to college, because back then you either programmed or you did engineering, and that neither one of those really kind of drew me in. But I liked working with computers and building them and do things like that. So I started helping the computer guy, and quickly realized, to be honest, I would make more money if I went the computer route. So I was working, the survey research center I was at the University of Maryland. So I switched to a different department and got a computer job, and then worked on certifications. Got my certifications, worked up, moved to another company as a network engineer, and then at that company worked my way up into management and actually got myself all the way up to vice president level. It was around that time when I went back and got my master's. I got an MS in the management of IT to kind of justify what I was doing, but also give me that extra education, because I knew I wanted to be full CIO. And then I left there and then became a CIO. I was CIO this is the third company at Jet Aviation where I've been a CIO.
and I should probably mention, because Christy triggered it, I got my MBA at George Mason. Just saying, that's the connection. I am a patriot too.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm so glad that both of you all had different, like varying career journeys, but the trajectory is always, I feel like it's like a very different thing per person. And sometimes you're exploring so many different options along the way. And I think especially how Lisa sort of mentioned that they are building blocks to sort of who you are now, and being able to kind of utilize whatever skills you gain along the way in your end goal and even beyond that, because who knows, maybe this, even after this, there's something else and there's something else after that. So that's awesome to hear.
Percent.
Yeah, and the next question I just wanted to ask you guys is, what inspired you to pursue a career in business specifically? Maybe Christy, if you could start with this one.
Yeah, so I think that it's so interesting to me to learn how companies function, how they make decisions, how they make money, and interactions with customers. And from the technology perspective, I mean, you think about nowadays, I mean, it used to be that companies would run and then they also kind of had to have some IT stuff. But now, I mean, technology is a big piece of everybody's strategy. I mean, you cannot function without it. And so it's always it's very interesting to me, and I get the most satisfaction when I'm in a company and I can help drive that strategy and help grow the company and provide better experiences for our customers and our employees. So that's kind of what drew me to it. I really like being part of a strategy with growing, and honestly just that being part of a company that's making money and really impacting their customers.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I definitely would second, third, fourth the statement that tech has been integrated into literally every, I think, interest or area. Even as a musician myself, I feel like technology, even within the music field, has become a thing. Legal technology, HR, whatever department you're working in, you're gonna eventually have to kind of wrap your head around whatever new technologies in that area. So I think it's super valuable that you emphasize the importance of that. And Lisa, could you share a little bit about your journey as well?
Yeah, I think for me, why I was interested in business, I have from the time I think I was 14, or maybe even 12 when I had my paper out, and then later, like just trying to get a bunch of my friends together so that we could have like a babysitter, like, little company, to moving on. I've to when I was, I don't know, 24, and started my first, sign language interpretation company. And then owning Virginia Internet Services. I've always had that entrepreneurial business mindset. And I think watching my parents, who had started their own company when I was a teenager, and they had a technology company in Northern Virginia that was quite successful. So watching them, build something from the basement and to something that was very successful and flourishing was exciting as a teenager to watch as well. So I think I inherently, just who I am, I have that desire. And then having those influences with my mom and dad, watching them. And then there's something very thrilling about owning your own firm and growing it. And I enjoyed both of those experiences. And then on the other side, just like Christy said, technology, I've always been attracted to that as well. Same thing, building computers with my dad, or watching Star Trek with my dad, on the couch, all the way up to where I am today, and how it is pervasive everywhere, like you said. And especially now with AI, you've got to have a smart, you have got to be able to bridge those disruptions, technology, whether positive or negative disruptions, into what the business is trying to achieve. And it doesn't matter what the business is. And that's kind of the cool thing about being a CIO, is that it really does translate. It's almost like, being a nurse or a teacher. It doesn't matter where you are regionally, you can take those skills somewhere. Same thing with being a CIO. The fundamentals of what we need to deliver are there, but then the business side, being able to make those translations, that's where when you have a really effective CIO who can make those transitions, technology to business, and directly into impacting strategy and results.
Yeah. And I think like information in general is such an integral part of every company because it's what people can dissect and take away from whatever content that they've or data that they've really gathered. That's how like a company can progress or grow or develop and everything. So it's really important that CIOs especially, I feel like, have that sort of ability to communicate within like different teams, being able to kind of interpret and also just like communicate on behalf of other teams. Like it's a lot of, I'm sure that you both have a lot of different types of like communication experiences, working with a lot of teams, working with a lot of people. So it's very, very important. And I also wanted to just kind of circle back to your earlier mention of having ambitions at like an early age. I think that's super impressive that, you know, that entrepreneurship and just ability to kind of take something that you like to do or something that you might have an idea for and take it to the next level and kind of follow through. And I'm sure that that was also a huge part of your journey throughout your career and everything. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and I'll just give a little plug, especially for the young women out there. I was a little bit, let me see, I wanted to use the word ballsy, but you can edit that out if I'm not allowed to use that word. But I think one of the things that sometimes as women, we hold ourselves back entrepreneurially from, like, we're waiting for permission or we're waiting for, are we allowed to do that? You know, to your point, if you've got an idea, if you want to try something, go ahead and do that positive negative list. You know, should I do it? Should I not do it? What's the worst thing that can happen? What's the absolute awesome most thing that could happen? And then once you get that fear out of the way, you've already figured out the worst and the best, then you can jump in knowing, you know, the parameters of that. And that'll give you the, you know, the fortitude to move forward. But don't wait for somebody to give you permission because you're not going to get it. So just do it.
Yeah, no. And I think the pros con list is something that I think I would definitely take on moving forward because I often find myself in a similar situation where it's like if it's something I really want to pursue, finding out like the differences, like maybe there are some pros, but then the cons just every single time I guess are more like they're easier to write down, they're easy to list out. So then I'm like, oh man, maybe I should just hold back. But that's a really great idea. So I'm sure a lot of people will appreciate that advice. Just moving forward as a business executive, what has been the most challenging decision that you've had to make? And this doesn't have to be singular. It could be maybe a few decisions that were tough to make, but just overall, just a difficult moment that you had to sort of go over. Maybe Christie, if you could start with this one.
Yeah. So I think the most challenging decision I have ever had to make, and I've had to do this at multiple companies, is kind of on the people side. I'll say it like I make all sorts of decisions on how to spend money and investing in technology and all these sort of things. But ultimately, when you are brought in, especially I've been brought into a few companies from the outside to affect change. And one of the first things you have to do is you have to look at the people. You have to look at your organization, and you have to make difficult decisions. And that's really, really, really tough because one of the biggest strengths of leaders, strong leaders, is relationship building and being authentic and truly getting to know people on your team. Like, you know, really getting to know them as people. And so then the negative is you have to make business decisions when it comes to people. If you are going to restructure, or if you have people on your team where they just don't have the right skills and they can't get there and you have to make changes. And or if you're in a company where you're hitting financial challenges and you need to lay people off or things like that, it's very, very difficult. I'll say this right now. I have fired people so easily. That is not a difficult decision because if somebody's fired, it means that they've been talked to over months and months about not meeting certain expectations. They've been given lots of opportunities, that sort of thing. So that may sound mean, it might sound rough, but if I'm firing somebody, it's not a surprise to them. This has been processed, but laying people off or doing things like that has probably been the most challenging, just because I do pride myself on building relationships on people within my team and really getting to know them. And a lot of times I know them, I know their families, but ultimately as a leader, you have to make the decision that is best for the business. And that's what it's about. So I think that's probably honestly been really the biggest challenge at, you know, all the different companies that I've been at, because I feel like at each company I've had a situation where for either financial reasons we had to lay people off, or just organizationally, strategically, the restructure created that, and that's what we had to do.
Yeah, and just as a follow-up, do you feel like it's difficult to just compartmentalize these things when you, for example, like it's someone that you know personally, or there's just a really strong relationship with someone that you've been working with for a long time, and then having to go through with the process like a layoff or something like that? How are you able to sort of keep it together while making such a tough decision?
Yeah, you know, and I'm so glad you used the word compartmentalize. I use that word frequently. I think Lisa and I have talked about this.
Yep.
Like, to be a really effective leader, if you want to move kind of up in the ranks in companies and get to executive roles, you have to master the art of compartmentalization. I had issues like I was dealing with my mom was very sick and dying, but yet I still had to do my job, or I have things going on with my kids, or I still have to do it, things like that. And so you have to be able to compartmentalize and be able to do that. And to your question, I actually laid off a person that was actually one of my best friends. And it was the right business decision. And it was horrible. It was awful. It was just awful. And things kind of died after that. But years later, we actually reconnected. But I had to do it. And but I get into that mode. I get into, this is a business decision. I'm in work mode. This is what I have to do. It's not personal. And Steven says, so my last name is Nader. And I got a nickname years ago. So my coworkers were calling me Darth Nader. And they were saying, because I would come in and I wasn't evil, but they're like, you come in and you make these tough decisions, and you can just, move forward and do these things without even shedding a tear, type of thing. And so and because that you have to be able to do it. You have to be able to go, "Ooh, I'm in business mode, and this is what I'm doing right now," and you can't let it impact you emotionally. Does it impact you? Yeah. You have to give yourself time for that as well, because we're not robots.
Right. And Lisa, what about you on your challenging
Well,
decision?
she definitely stole mine 100%.
Sorry.
Whenever I've had to reorg and organize and change the organization, which resulted in people having to lose their jobs. But so I got to think, I don't want to give the exact same answer. So I would say my second, though, most challenging thing, a little bit more personal, is when I knew it was time for me to leave. And then I'm much like Christie. We have very similar philosophies and leadership styles, where I'm very relationship oriented. That's like the number one thing. So when you are leaving and you need to, for your own personal growth or for whatever reason, or you know that you need to make a new change, you also know that you're divorcing yourself from that organization and the people and the relationships. It feels like that, right? Even though it's technically not like that. So the internal anxiety that I have whenever I leave an organization is very, very difficult. And it's, profound, and, a lot of, hand wringing on, should I now, should I wait? Should I, and what is the impact of me leaving, that kind of thing. That I would say that would be my backup answer, since Christie took my first.
And on that time, let me add something. I'm gonna stand up, so y'all are gonna see my shorts on this podcast, but we're being authentic and real. But hold on.
I love your jean shorts.
So, it's work from home mode. So what Lisa was saying, and I share the same thing. When I left, I was CIO for a healthcare company, and I loved my job there. And the only reason why I left was, so my company was about $1 billion in revenue. we got acquired by a $70 billion company. And my job was not in jeopardy. They were not going to eliminate me, but I was going to become this tiny cog in this huge machine. And that's not me. And so Lisa and I talk about this all the time as well. You have to know what you want in your job and your career and what works for you. And so that wasn't for me. So I looked and I found another job. And so, yeah, the day that I told my team that I was leaving, it was gut wrenching because I had such a fabulous team. And so they threw, I probably had like 3 going away parties. They were amazing. And then it was a couple weeks after I left there, I got a package in the mail from them. And this was one of the pictures that we had taken together as a team.
Mhm.
And the bottom says, it's all her fault. And because what I had told them, and part of the relationship building was, I made it very clear that, look, if there's ever any mistakes or things go wrong, own up to it. Come to me, come to the team, let us know what went wrong so we can fix it. Like, don't hide from it. Let's work together to fix it. You're allowed to make mistakes. Don't make the same mistake twice, but make mistakes so we can fix it. And I told them, anytime something goes wrong, if I'm up in the CEO's office talking about a mistake, I don't mention any of their names. I say, we have an issue. I'm dealing with it. Here's what I'm doing to fix it, whatever. If it's a problem, I never would mention any of their names. If they did a great job, absolutely. In front of the CEO, I'm saying, Kathy and Ryan and Susie and Bob, whatever, I mentioned their names. But if there's a mistake, I told them it's my fault. It is all my fault. I need to own this. And so they actually did that and it's all her fault because we had built this. And I got this in the mail, like crying, because it was just, it really is, when you build that team, to Lisa's point, leaving is just, it's awful. I mean, I don't like calling a work environment family, because it's not family, but we can become, friends and build those relationships. So.
I think that's a perfect transition actually to my next sort of ideas and topics about leadership. And I think it's so important that you're able to operate in a leadership style where you are able to kind of amplify the voices of those that are maybe working underneath you, but while also making sure that like things are taken care of, but people are being brought up empowered throughout their time working. So I think that's super like a super healthy way of operating in any sort of leadership role. And to that point, how do you both sort of approach leadership, and what are some qualities that you think are essential for being an effective leader? And I know you touched on a few, but maybe Lisa, if you could just kick us off.
Well, I think Christie said it earlier, used the word being authentic. That's number one. Also, for me, empathy is like one of those, being empathetic and actually through the COVID, disaster, leaders who actually were able to tap into empathy, were able to like have solid teams, good results, things like that, because you have to be empathetic if you're going to be a good servant leader, if you're going to be able to listen for either success trends or risks and weaknesses. And if you can have an empathetic ear to it, you can get to root causes quicker, and you can create those relationships quicker. So empathy and being a genuine person, and then communication, of course. I mean, it's kind of like a fundamental skill. It's not a sexy one to talk about, but you've got to be able to, yes, you have to be able to build strategy and vision and all that, but if you can't communicate it, then it's dead in the water. So, and whether you're representing your team, like if it's all your fault, like Christie said, or you're cheerleading something, or you're getting resources, or you're getting buy-in, or the many things you must do as a leader, all fundamentally, we all as human beings need to work on our communication skills. So if you list all the competencies of leadership, and like there's 13 that I follow, but out of all of them, communication is one that everyone needs to improve on. And it doesn't matter where you are in your career. It's something should be a life goal of continually trying to improve your communication.
And I think that extends even beyond the workplace, like just being able to communicate in day-to-day situations.
Yeah.
like everyday interactions, I think communication has become even more, I mean, especially after the pandemic and whatnot, I think being able to effectively communicate has become more and more a little bit of a closed door where you're really trying to break down some barriers to have that open communication. But it's definitely a quality I think I would totally agree is super valuable. Christy?
Yeah, yeah, 100% agree with what Lisa said. And and I guess to maybe extend the communication piece, I mentor and coach people. And one thing that I talk about pretty frequently is when you are moving up into leadership roles, it's the communication and relationship piece of it is very interesting because we're not going to be we're not going to like every single person we work with. We're just not. We're humans. People have different personalities. You're not always going to be best buddies with your peers in different departments and different areas, things like that. But we have to be able to work together. And that's the ultimate goal. And one thing that I have had to do a few different times in my career is I've worked with people where it wasn't even that we just weren't best friends. It was contentious. And you can't, sure, you're going to go back to your friends at work and you're going to kind of bitch and, complain and vent about this person. But in the end, you have to be very careful. If you're a leader, you really can't be venting about your peers to your teammates. You really shouldn't do that, especially if that person is like your peer or that sort of thing. You should really be careful with what you're saying, especially among the people your direct reports, because they listen to you, they feed off of that energy. And what you really need to do is you need to build the skill of going to that person and having a very open conversation of, hey, I really want us to work well together. We need to be able to do this, but I don't feel like this is going the right way. I feel like there's either this or there's this contention, or I don't feel like we're being very respectful of each other. Bringing those things up is you have to be able to be comfortable with having those types of conversations. And I've actually done it a few times. And there's one example where there's a particular person, and he and I had like multiple conversations where I even had to look at him and say, what you did was incredibly disrespectful. And I need to work with you on this because I need to understand, how we can work together. We have to be able to work together. And so we've had to have these sort of conversations. And is it the most comfortable thing? Not necessarily. But the more you do it, it actually becomes comfortable, and it becomes more comfortable because you should be able to expect to have a productive relationship with peers, especially when they're your leadership peers. You should expect the same productive type of relationship from them as and respect these sort of things. So when you start having these conversations, you start realizing this shouldn't be awkward or uncomfortable. I'm not asking for anything I don't deserve here. We both should be acting a certain way. So I think and I coach people. I've had and actually over the past year I've had a few situations where I've had people where I've had conversations with them about some their coworkers that they're struggling with. And I'm like, well, so here's the thing, this is my expectation of you. I'm not going to fix it for you, you have to fix it. And so I think that's a skill. You don't it's not something that that it's not taught in school. It's not really even taught. I mean, it's not something you just learn. And so I try to share those experiences with my team members, to share what I've gone through and the strategies I've used to do that. But that's really a key when you're any sort of management role and hire, honestly.
I'm just gonna keep pulling that thread because this is uber critical. And as a reference, if you haven't read it, everybody should read Crucial Conversations. Go read the book. It'll give you the formula to do exactly what Christy just said, and it's something that you can practice. Second thing that Christy said that is very critical throughout your whole career and should be practiced early, and that is don't gossip. So whether you're venting or whatever, take that home to do that. Do not do it with your peers. it is uber tempting to do it. It actually, your brain releases an endorphin that makes you feel better when you're gossiping. So there's chemical reactions, there's camaraderie, there's all these reasons that you're going to want to be able to vent / gossip with your peers, but it is toxic. It will not, it puts you in a bad light. And it definitely will not help your career. And oh, by the way, you never know when this person that you're gossiping around is going to be in your critical path for whatever it is you're trying to get either accomplished professionally or personally. So it's best to create pillars of goodwill, and positive relationships. And if there's a big gossip session going on, I always use oh my gosh, I've got to go to the bathroom excuse, and like, just leave the room and don't go back. So that's my pro tip for how to get out of gossip. But two critical things. I couldn't agree with Christie more. Crucial conversations and don't gossip.
Oh yeah. And I think it's super important because it takes a leader to be able to hold those tough conversations while also making sure that the conversation's going the right way. That I think it also just boils down to some common ground, whatever common ground you can find with the person, whether or not you may or may not be working super effectively at that point together, whatever it is, or personally there might be an issue. I find that there's always like some like very bare minimum point that maybe it's like the thing that you're working towards. Maybe that's like a common ground, or maybe there's like one little thing, one little aspect that both of you all can agree on, and that's kind of where you work out from. And I know that's like a I think a tactic for like conflict resolution as well, just making sure that there's some sort of like some sort of commonality between two of you and kind of going from there. So I think it's super important that you both had touched on those 2 points. Moving into a little bit of a different area, is there a project or an initiative that either of you are particularly proud of in your role, something super memorable or just important to you personally? Lisa, if you'd like to start.
Oh gosh. I would say both times when I took the leap to start my own firm was, it was scary, to have that checklist and all of that, and had mitigation plans for all the con parts. But to have that like guts to do it, that's in the more in the past, but more recent, I would say, going through the pandemic and just being able to very quickly overnight convert people to working from home, and having the CEO like look at you in the eyes and say the success or failure of our entire firm is on your shoulders. And I think going through that and the war rooms that we had and everything that we went through to get in front of it, and actually the firm that I was with was extremely successful through COVID, and I'm really proud of that, what my team did with that, and how everybody rolled up their sleeves and got really innovative and got creative, and the solutioning was happening fast, and it was a beautiful thing to watch. So I would see those two memories of mine come top of mind.
That's awesome. And were there like certain support systems that sort of helped you like progress in both of those situations?
Yeah, definitely. It's great to have, and especially for CIOs, it's important to have community. And Christie and I belong to a CIO community that throughout the pandemic, we had a weekly morning call over coffee. It was only a half hour, and it still is going today, by the way. It was born out of that environment, but it's still going on today. And in that half hour, just getting the validation. It got to the point after that meeting, the leadership team that I belonged to at the time would run down to my office and go, okay, what did they say? How are they handling this? How are they handling that? And I could go, well, Jet Aviation is doing this, or, and be able to name drop the other organizations within the community and how they were handling stuff. So I think for me, community, and then I have a strong pool of mentors that, having that again, for me, it's just a little bit of validation so I can march forward with confidence. and know that, my decisions have been validated and somebody has my back.
Yeah, those communities are, I think, such a huge part of who people are, and also help get to like the next point and the next level and where they want to be. So that's awesome. Christy, what about you on a project or initiative that you're proud of?
Yeah. And to Lisa's point with it, I think anyone that you talk to, any executive or any leader, when they talk about projects and initiatives that they're proud of, I think, a lot of times you'll hear part of that story is, they clearly didn't do it alone. And, we have our teams, but we also have kind of like what Lisa said, sort of our outside advisors. I'm frequently talking with my own internal team. And when we start talking about trying to solve some sort of problem or implement something new, my question is, okay, who's done this before? Like who, and I have people that on my team who've worked for my company for like over 20 years. And I've said to them, make sure you don't get stuck in like Jet Aviation think, like how we think. Make sure that you're meeting with people, peers in similar roles at other companies, that you're doing these sort of things, whether it's virtual, whether it's in-person events, whatever it is, and talking about how are you doing this? So so we kind of get ourselves thinking differently. And I would say in my probably the biggest thing I'm most proud of most recently is in my current company. My company is global. We're in the US, we're in EMEA, we're in APAC. And when I joined the company, our three global regions are sort of functioning as three separate companies. And we had three separate finance systems and three separate HR systems and all these sort of things. And there was and all the processes that they were using were completely separate, and everything was disjointed. And so I came on board. We're not done with this. I'm hitting my third year at Jet this month. We're not done yet. This is a huge undertaking that we're going through right now, but we're essentially, it's almost like M&A, merger and acquisition type of work that I'm doing here, where I'm pulling together three companies. And but what I love is I started with having conversations with a lot of the different business line leaders and the different functional leaders, like accounting and HR and legal and finance and all these different groups on, hey, by the way, this isn't this is not a system problem. This is a process. This is a people and process. So let's first talk about, the type of people we have, and then how are we going to streamline these processes? We need to agree, if we're going to globalize, we need to agree on one process out of the three, or something brand new. So it was really cool as I was working to kind of educate people on people, process, technology. And if you visualize like a three-legged stool, you have those three legs of people, process, technology, but people comes first, then the process, and then we talk about the shiny objects, the tools, that make it happen. And it was the coolest thing when months into it, I'm in a meeting and I hear somebody in one of the business lines talking about one of the challenges, one of the processes, something that we had to re-engineer, how they worked. And somebody started talking about some sort of tool, some sort of piece of software. And another person said, well, hold on. We have to make sure we have our processes clean first. We have to figure this out. With it, and I think they even said people, process, technology. And I was like, yes. So I think what excites me is my team is doing some pretty cool things. I mean, what we're doing right now is massive change. It's massive disruption, massive transformation for my company. And on the, but it's not just a technology thing. It's this process and what we have gone through, the conversations on how things should function and the processes has been really interesting, because that's the most difficult part, because you have all these humans that want to do it a certain way. Everybody's way is the right way. And so being part of that as well, to have everybody work together to try to set aside their own biases on, okay, let's talk about what is the best way. So that's probably the biggest thing I'm most proud of now, because it's really cool to work with a company and experience that, and also experience people sort of getting those aha moments during it, which is very cool.
And that must be super rewarding just to see as a leader, to see people that like are just equally as motivated and engaged in this whole process of work. And it goes beyond just like the do your thing, do your job and like the 9 to 5 and that's it. You know, it's a lot more than just that. And it means a lot when people are putting their like true mind to like the test to make sure that things are going the way they should or developing the way they should or progressing the way they should as well. Um, Moving forward, I would like to kind of transition to a little bit more about specifically being a woman in the business field. How important is something like networking for women in business? And what are some strategies that you would recommend for someone maybe in the younger side or maybe on the more experienced side, whatever it is, wherever they are in the spectrum of being a woman in business? What is some advice that you might have for them? Lisa, if you'd like to start.
Wow. Is it important? Yes, it's uber important. Let me just get that out, spit that out right out front. And networking, if you can, networking should be like a job for you. And it should be something that is on your to-do list. It's something that you need to be working on from the beginning all the way through your career. And for me, it's about creating relationships, like we talked about at the very beginning of this. And then what service can you do to these, to help these people in their career? And if you can have that mindset, that'll take you along. And it's from a genuine place, like how I really like this person, I respect this person. How can I, create an environment where I can be of service to them? Tactically though, I have had little mastermind groups of women that I have kept throughout my whole career. One that, gosh, has been almost 20 years going, where we meet quarterly and solve all the first world problems, and then we help each other in our careers. Usually over a glass of wine, which is fantastic. But the thing is, if any one of us needed help, everybody would come to the fore. And then again, we were talking earlier about having that community. The higher you go up in the chain, the more it becomes critical that you understand that you can't do it by yourself. So having that network, again, for validation, for the answer, for the support, for the connections, is critical. So joining groups, getting involved, be on a committee, lead something within an external group. But I think the funnest thing though is to find cool women like, Christie and I definitely have many Friday night calls where we're talking with each other or at a restaurant or at each other's houses, frankly, where we're just sitting there and talking about, what we need to do. That is critical. So find people that, you respect, that you admire, that you're attracted to what they do in life. And then tell them that's how you feel about that. And then ask them, to be a part of your circle. And then again, if you go in with that mindset of what can I do for them as well, then it just becomes a naturally like a beautiful relationship that, that you move forward with. But is it critical? It is critical. It is critical to have a network. It's critical to work it and to work it professionally like you would any other certification, except for it's a lifetime thing that you never quite get the certificate at the end. You constantly have to be working it.
I love that you sort of emphasize the importance of it being like a two-way connection rather than just like a single-headed, because I think that's oftentimes seen as like what the right thing to do is just, oh, reach out and just like be like, hey, can you do this for me? Or hey, can you give me this opportunity or whatever it is, and just have that direct ask, but not necessarily having that sort of conversation or whatever.
You can't do that though. You can't go ask for something if you don't really have the relationship first. I can't like ask Christie for a favor if that's the very first thing. Like, not that it's conniving in this whole relationship because I'm going to ask for something in the end. But you cannot start off the bat with, I need your help. I want you to do something for me. It's much, much deeper and richer and real connection when you can just go in and be that listening ear for the other person and create that symbiotic back and forth relationship without it being transactional.
Yeah. And I think that's the root to any good relationship, like regardless of if it's in the workplace or if it's as a friend or whatever it is, like it has to go beyond just like an ask or just a favor or whatever it is. So that's super important.
100%.
Christy, what's your take on this?
Yeah, no, I would just say one big ditto. But to kind of to extend on the ask, because that's one thing I was going to dive into is it's difficult. I'll have people who will reach out to me that, yeah, I don't have a relationship with. A lot of times it's on LinkedIn. Someone will reach out and say, hey, I need a new job, can you help me, or do you know of anything? And and I'll take that. I might look at their LinkedIn and look at their resume, and I mean, if I happen to know something off the top of my head, but that's when you reach out in that way, you reach out and it goes and it just falls off, because somebody could reach out to me and go, hey, I'm looking for another job, do you know of anything? Well, no, I don't. Okay, so if something comes up, I'll think about it, but I'm more likely to remember you and what you need, if kind of to Lisa's point, if before the reach out, we have that relationship. I've had former coworkers that did not really keep in touch with me, and then 10 years later they reached out and said, hey, I need a job, can you help me? And so I think one of the pieces that's difficult is, if you're not just a either an extrovert or a comfortable social person, where it comes more natural to reach out to people and build relationships, you're not going to do that as naturally. And so I think that's where it's important. What can help people that are not as comfortable doing that is if you find an organization that you can join. So that way it's you're part of sort of the structured organization. Maybe there's meetings, maybe there's events, there's things. And for people that are not as socially comfortable, that's a little bit easier for them, because you can join this organization. And in-person events is the key. Having online chat or in a LinkedIn group is not going to do what you need, but you need to find those opportunities. And one of the things I'll also suggest is, for people that are not as comfortable in social situations, or not as comfortable maybe meeting and talking with people they don't know, is and this sounds odd, but so Toastmasters is an organization where you can join, and a lot of people think, well, it's just to help you learn how to do speeches, and that's part of it. You can become more comfortable with public speaking, but what it also does, it actually does give you a little bit more of a comfort in just speaking with people. And the tactics that you learn about kind of public speaking, because it's not just about speaking to a room of 1,000 people, it's all sorts of different things, can also help you in those situations. And I had joined Toastmasters years ago, and is at the point I was in between jobs. I'm like, let me just do this. Let me fill up my time. And it was fun, and I learned some cool things. But one thing I experienced is my local Toastmasters group. They were so friendly and supportive and amazing. And so for people who aren't as comfortable, whether you want to be comfortable more with just even speaking in general, or just being in social situations where you're speaking, interacting with people, that actually can help you, and it can create severe anxiety going to your very first Toastmasters meeting if you're not comfortable with these things. But of course, in life we have to fight our fears, right? We have to meet, but you go in, and really it was truly the nicest group of people. And somebody would get up to do their first speech, because you do different levels, you're in the beginner and you do these things, and it was, I mean, so insanely supportive. I gave that suggestion to so many people. I'm like, join your local group. These people are fabulous. So that's even kind of a unique, creative way to sort of help in your job. You're moving up. If you're moving up in roles, everybody has to talk in meetings, no matter what level they are, almost. You have to do these sort of things. But definitely just finding some local organization where there's in-person events, and starting with that. And sometimes it's trial and error too. You might join something, maybe whatever, but just try different things. And because I do know, especially in technology, a lot of people in technology aren't always as comfortable socially. And I'm kind of generalizing, but not. So yeah, so I think that's what I would add to that.
That's incredible advice. And I think I also appreciate beneath the advice about networking, I also noticed that I think both of you all have this ambition to have a lifelong learning of whatever it is that you're working on. So I think that's such a valuable thing to have. And I think that also is a quality that is in a lot of great leaders, being able to constantly learn on your own. So whether it is taking the time to be involved in an organization or a program that betters you in one way or another, I think that's super inspiring for people that are looking to get into roles such as yours, or hoping to get to different places in the business world or even beyond that. Being able to lifelong learn, being able to always be curious and ask questions about things is just such a valuable quality to have and instill in yourself. So that's amazing. And I think just to wrap this conversation up, I'd love for you all to just share some advice on people that are looking to enter the business world, specifically young women, but even beyond that, just people that are looking to take on such leadership roles or just get involved in the business world. What's some advice that you have for them? Lisa, if you'd like to start.
Great question. I would say, number one, don't let your aspirations be a secret. That's one of my life lessons that I always like to get out there. So it's much easier for the universe to give you what you want. And if wanting to get into the business world is what you want to do, make sure everyone around you knows that's what you want to do and that you've branded yourself that way. And then two, don't be afraid. Just leap in and don't wait for permission. Don't have fear. Don't wait for permission, and make sure that your desires are not something that you're waiting to be gifted to you and you're waiting for permission. You have to let it be known, and then you have to just go for it.
I love that. The best time is now. So that's awesome.
Right.
Christy, what about you?
Yeah, I think along with that, think about your brand. Think about how you present yourself, and when you leave a room, are you remembered? And how are you remembered? So because there's what is it they say? There's no such thing as bad press or whatever. But there is such a thing as a bad reputation. There's a,
Right.
so what's your brand? How do people see you? How do you present yourself? And again, when you leave the room, what do people think? And if you want to move up into leadership positions, you want people to think of you in a certain way. And we were talking kind of before we started recording the podcast of look at people who are in roles that you want to be in. Pay attention to them. Pay attention to the ones that are successful. What do they do? How do they speak? How do they dress? How do they present themselves? And I mean, we have, I call it my favorite robot, Chat GPT. You can even ask these tools, what is the best way to dress? How should I, present myself? What should I do? And I think what's interesting is when we talk about kind of our own personal brand, your brand is really it's not just how you look and your physical style. That absolutely actually is part of it. It's part of it.
Yep.
And then, but it's also it's your ethics and what is your personal sort of mission and what drives you. So I think that piece of it, sort of thinking about that a little bit and walking through, I mean, you can kind of Google personal brand and how do you sort of formulate that, I think is key. And we talk about that in my own company. We actually were doing some leadership training, and we're getting in small groups, and basically, the goal was, hey, what do you think that person's brand is? Describe what you get from that person. And so that's something that people can even talk to their friends or their coworkers and even ask, what do you think my brand is?
Wow, that's incredible. And I think those are great takeaways for anyone listening to this episode. And again, thank you so much for both of you coming on to this podcast today. I really appreciate it. It was super fruitful. It felt like the easiest conversation. So I'm so glad that we were able to do this. Yeah, and just thank you so much for joining as guests today.
You're welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we always love it.